Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is. A new look today, and if you're wondering why I look so absolutely ridiculous, you will know in just a minute, because the name of today's show is Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Thus the hat and the striped shirt, but the striped shirt will explain itself in another couple of seconds. I have two guests here today, both of whom I'm sure everybody in town already knows. If not from BCTV, most definitely from their sports involvement in town, and I don't know, maybe for some nefarious acts as well, but I know everybody in town knows both of them. And the first one would be none other than our BCTV station manager, Bill Jennings.
Kathy, how are
Bill, it's good having you here today.
It certainly is different to be on this
Well,
side.
yes, it is. And as you can see, he has some regalia on. So now you're starting to figure out what the show's all about. We're going to be talking about umpiring. And Bill has been a baseball umpire, and I have to read all this because there's so much. He's been a baseball umpire since 1995, starting with the Bedford Little League and with the Bedford Babe Ruth teams. And he's been a member of New Hampshire Baseball Umpire Association for 14 years. He's umpired at all kinds of postseason tournaments and lots of finals, even at Fisher Cat Stadium. So, I mean, we've got a celebrity here, bona fide. He's an executive board member of the New Hampshire Baseball Umpires Association, all these acronyms. Yeah. And he also manages their website, which some of you may have fun going to, which is www.nhbua.org. And I'm told that there's like a pretty good article on there by him. Who knew? Who knew he writes too? We thought he was just a TV star. And my second guest, again, somebody who is well known to you and who also sits on the BCTV board with me. We've never tussled, have we? We get along pretty good, I guess.
No officials there.
Yeah, no, we haven't had any arguments.
Who could argue with you, Kathy?
Yeah. Oh, well, a few people. Well, in any event, Bob has a long and historic, I guess you could say, career in sports here in Bedford as well. He's, for the past 9 years, he's been involved as a Little League umpire. Well, actually, for a total of 9 years, 94 to 2003 in softball, and 97 through 2002 in baseball. And he also officiated at the All-Star State Quarterfinals in softball in 99 and at the All-Star State Finals in baseball in 2001. I mentioned Babe Ruth. He officiated at the Senior Babe Ruth Conference Championship from 2003 all the way through to 2008. The Senior Babe Ruth Regional Quarterfinals from 2003 through to 2006. The Senior Babe Ruth Finals 2003 to 2007. The Babe Ruth Regional Finals in softball in 2009. And the Babe Ruth World Series All-Star Game in softball. Also, he's officiated for the American Legion at the state finals in 2006, 7, 8, 10, and 11. And he also is a member of the New Hampshire Baseball Umpire Associations, has been for 11 years, has also been 9 years with the New Hampshire Softball Umpires Association. And that's not all. He's also, for the past 5 years, been active with the East Coast Umpire Association and is an NCAA, impressive, Division I and II umpire, and has umpired games from the following conferences: the Northeast 10, the Atlantic 10, the Ivy League, the Patriot League, the Big East, the American East, and the Atlantic Coast Conference. In his spare time, he serves as the Bedford High School board operator for their basketball games, and he's been doing that since 2010 and continues to do it now. So here I am, I who know nothing, literally, about baseball. Seriously, I mean, when my kids, I told you, when my kids were playing Little League, I'd take them religiously to the games, sit there, and I'd have to look around me to see the people like who were there for our team when they stood up and when they clapped and everything. So, I mean, this could go anywhere. You know, I was going to wear a whistle because I wasn't totally sure I wasn't getting set up here to make a fool out of myself, and I figured I'd, you know, blow the whistle and rule you both out or whatever you guys do. But anyway,
We could probably use that in some of our meetings here next door.
Oh, that's probably true. Yeah. Can I be the whistleblower?
Flag goes down. You can be the whistleblower.
Yeah,
You
need a flag. Yeah.
I'm
There you
not
go,
coming
flag.
unless I get the whistle.
Yeah, okay.
So they even talked me into this, if you can believe it. So I sit here looking like, what's that cartoon figure that the hair's out like that? Is it Woody Woodpecker? I don't know.
Bozo the Clown?
I don't know.
I don't know who else.
This will be one of
You
those
look
tapes I
fine.
won't put in my collection box at home. This will be one of the ones that I'll go, I never had anything to do with that show. All right, I'm going to throw questions at you, and
Okay.
I want you two to go crazy
All right.
for both of you, and then you can decide who wants to go first or second. How the heck?
Well, that's where you have to become an official now.
Oh,
You have to make a determination.
all right. Do I get to time you too? Or?
You can do
Yeah.
anything and everything.
As long as we stay within the time frame.
There you go.
Because if we don't, you'll say it's not going on the air.
Well, you got to remember something.
But I
you know.
bet you'd break rules for this one if we went way
Oh,
over
we
time.
could potentially.
He
But
would. He would.
I got to tell you, which is interesting, is not to jump in this right away. What is the only sport that isn't governed by a clock?
This so.
See, you're smarter than you're giving yourself
Well,
credit
no, that's
for.
only because a couple of times when Jerry took me to Fenway, and I would sit there going, is this ever going to be over? I know this.
Now, softball actually does have timing rules. You have to get a pitch off in a certain amount of
They
time.
do.
Well,
you have to
with-
get in the batter's box a certain amount of time, or it's a ball or a strike. So.
Right, and those are the things that officials can control. Those are, but as far as the number of innings, there's a winner that has to be declared, and it's not governed by a specific time.
So it could just
like
go
the first
forever.
quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, game's
Yeah.
over. So yeah, you're pretty smart. You picked
No,
up
I'm
on that one
not.
right
No,
away,
I'm
so-
not. I just remember, as I said, sitting there, and a couple of times in the pouring rain, thinking, are they all crazy? With an umbrella.
So what's your question there,
Well,
young lady?
first question is, how did you ever get started in this, and why would anyone want to become a sports official?
I think you kind of alluded to it. When you go down and you're watching your kids play, you're
Yeah.
involved in the game, and particularly at the Little League level, they're always looking for volunteers.
Oh, true.
And I knew I couldn't coach my son. Bobby is a little bit different with his girls. It's just that, I get emotionally involved in the game, so he and I, in taking directions from me or me coaching, patience sometimes isn't one of my virtues, so I just
Oh,
enjoyed
I never knew that.
Yeah. So I enjoyed watching it, but back in '95, and Bobby was involved at the same time, they were looking for officials, and I jumped behind the plate and kind of enjoyed it, and it was my way of participating in the game, and I thought it would end with Little League, but we kind of grew it down here at Bedford Little League back in '95 to '97 when a lot of us were pretty active, and all of a sudden it was like, this isn't bad. It helped me to understand the game of baseball a heck of a lot better.
But you were a fan, though, before that.
I was a fan, and I don't think you can get in at any sport, and this is just personally my opinion. Bobby has more sports experience in other venues, unless you are a fan of the game. And what this did for me is to get to know the game better, appreciate certainly what officials go through, and it really wasn't until one of our good friends, Merle Lamy, said, I want to go up to Plymouth State College and take the state association course. And so a bunch of us said, yeah, that's not a bad idea. It was kind of like whimsical. As we were sitting somewhere at having a libation, said, yeah, let's do it tomorrow. And little did we realize what we were getting into. And 14 years later, as a baseball official, I'm still involved in it, and I love every moment of it. There are times where you kind of shake your head, but there is an appreciation that I have for baseball officials and all officials, particularly at the youth league level, and that includes, then moving up into the middle school, high school, and then Bobby can talk more about the college level. But I just absolutely enjoy it. It helps keep me young, and it keeps me involved in the game. Even with all my kids out of high school, out of college, I still love being part of
Well, maybe
officiating the
there'll
youth
be,
programs.
grandchildren one of these days,
What's that?
Maybe there'll be grandchildren one of these days.
Oh, I have two.
Oh, you have
two,
two,
yeah.
all
And my son-in-law used to play. Bob knows he does D1 for the University of Connecticut.
Oh,
Then transferred
all
to
right.
Presbyterian. He had a full baseball scholarship. And coaching is a whole other subject, but he's got a calm, cool demeanor, and works well with officials. And my grandson, who's 10, is in the Leominster Little League, so
that's right.
I enjoy going down
That's
and
right.
watching them. So.
Now, you two are pretty tight. Is that how you met?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so how about you? How did you get
as
into all
with
this?
most of us, it all started because of Bill Jennings when he was president of the Little League and all that. Got Merle involved, and then I was actually at my daughter's softball game. It was she's probably 7 or 8, and they had an umpire that was there. And I was talking to this guy next to me, and he says, "This is terrible." He says, "I could do a better job." And we looked at each other. I think we could too. So we started volunteering. His name was Mike Bish, who was a friend of all of ours and that. So we got started on that side. And then we also started working with Bill and Merle doing the baseball side. So we did both the softball for our daughters and then did the baseball, because baseball was a little more organized back then. So they were teaching us how to do it, because Mike and I didn't know anything about it. So we went to that. And eventually when Merle and Bill got to the high school, they went to the high school and he said, "Wow, we really learned all this stuff." And I go, and we felt really stupid. Boy, we've been doing it wrong. We've been doing this. So then Mike and I went to the high school and did that, and I was fortunate enough to have 2 daughters play college softball, and so I kept moving on, and I said, "Geez, they're still no good. I think I can do better." And I again learned the position and the rules, and as I learned more, I realized how difficult it actually was and what you had to do. And it's a lot more different than being a fan or a fanatic than it is being an umpire.
I would guess.
So,
now,
but like us all, we started because of our kids.
Well, and a lot of things in life do start that way. Now, does somebody have to have an extensive knowledge of a sport before becoming an official? And I mean, what kind of experience or training would you have to have if you said, "Hey, this looks good, I'd like to do it"?
Well, it certainly helps, but it's not required. I can remember, and I know. I think I went through the program 1 year, Merle and I, and then Bob followed, I think, 1 year behind us. And,
now, is Merle still around in town, too?
Oh, yeah, and Merle is in the college level right now. And who's very active in Bedford Little League and was state certified as well, but his love was in Bedford Little League is Mike Robinson, who you know. Yeah. Michael is very actively involved in some kudos to Michael. Michael was recognized by the New Hampshire district, state of New Hampshire, for his outstanding success and support of the Little League program. And he was selected as one of the Eastern Regional umpires to handle the Little League playoffs. And those playoffs determine who goes to Williamsport. So Mike was on ESPN, and we were very proud to see him, because he was like one of our boys, and we were pretty impressed to see him down there. But to get back to what a person needs to know, familiarity with the sport is good. But I remember going to that class, and our classes were like 7 or 8 weekends.
Now,
and
this
there's a
was
lot
the
of
one up at Plymouth?
That's correct.
Okay.
And basically, it's almost like going to college, when you're sitting there and the professor says, or in the service or whatever it might be, where they try to emphasize how important a course is, or the profession you're going to get into is, take a look at the person to your right, take a person to your left. One of those 2 people are going to be leaving, or possibly 2 of those people are going to be leaving. You go like, okay, they're trying to set a standard. And they mean it, and it's not one of these that anybody can sign up, but the first thing I heard is they said, and you remember this, Bob, okay, how many people have umpired? And everybody, raised their hand. I raised my hand. I did Little League, I did Babe Ruth, and how many people have never officiated? And there was one individual that had never officiated, and they said, "We're going to like you." They prefer to have somebody with
raw material
without preconceived mechanics or understanding of officiating, because how you watch the game is completely different from how you officiate a game. And I can't emphasize that enough, because there are 2 things that we as officials have to know. 3, the least amount is certainly what the players are doing, but it's still important. In other words, knowing the game. Hey, there's 3 outs. There's, in high school, it's 7 innings, 9 innings in regular baseball, etc. But what we need to do, and we're tested constantly, rules, rules, rules. Mechanics, mechanics, mechanics. And Bobby, I think you'll agree to that.
Yeah, they actually, as you keep moving up in levels, the positioning is very, very key. a lot of times you're too close to a play. You actually have to step back, which seems unnatural. But if things are exploding in front of you, if you took 2 steps back, you would have had a much better view of things. So it's sometimes counterintuitive, the things that you learn as you move up in levels, as things get faster and get a little crazier. So.
And what Bob's saying is, you know, we can talk a little bit about the course that we go through, is that they don't expect everybody to come in and be able to be put on a field right away and know what they're doing. Again, it's mechanics and rules. And Bob is also coach, and now when he's become an official, I think we can say that coaches don't know the rules.
Really?
Sometimes on purpose.
Yes.
Sometimes on purpose.
And what I mean by that is,
ignorance is bliss and all that.
what I mean by that is they know the general rules. Okay, 3 outs, 7 innings. You know, okay. But there are things that are so deep into what has to be called in terms of dead balls, delayed dead balls, timeouts, fair balls, foul balls, talking, etc., that it's repetitive learning, and you'll learn that in any officiating course that you go to. And when you start out, like with our baseball program, is for the state, is that they provide you games at the junior varsity level, so you're learning the mechanics, which is a 5 hours.
Now what, on film, or you go to them, or
well,
how does that work?
Well, the way that it works is the students are given a booklet, okay, and everything is about books on mechanics.
Okay.
And then there's rules.
Okay.
And part of the 5-hour program, and it meets every Sunday, is during the spring course, is to certainly familiarize yourself with the mechanics, not so much with the book, of course with the book, but certainly physically going through it. Okay. And they have 8 instructors out there, excuse me, that will set scenarios for you. And the intent is really for you to make mistakes. So you make that mistake, and then you get reinforced. And it's all reinforcement, reinforcement, and I think Bob would agree with that.
Absolutely. It's, that reminded me of when we were trying to get better after the high school. We went to that sanction, the East Coast Umpires Association.
Working with Major League umpires.
Working with Major League umpires. And the scenarios they came up with, because they do that as a full-time profession, were mind-boggling to me. We all looked at each other, there's no way we're ever doing minor league baseball, because it was crazy. I mean, some of the scenarios they actually did and came up with.
Well, the major leagues, the stakes must be so high.
Wow.
I mean, just because of the dollars involved in player salaries and all
and you
that
have TV reviews,
stuff,
and you have a whole bunch of stuff that's...
Which I'm glad we don't have at the high school level, or the league level, or, you know, or even at the college level until you're on TV. But I think everybody that is watching this show should understand that it's a pace designed to have you learn. And as Bob well knows, that the course, you can have 30 people, I think, is the average, an annual average that they'll have in the state course. And
again, now the one at
Plymouth State,
okay.
right? And actually, they've moved that to Laconia High School now.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
How come?
Plymouth State is not making the facility available. So,
really?
Yes. And these are independently set up with one of our board members that have coordinated with the respective schools, and we had one of our board members that had a good relationship with the AD at Plymouth State who moved on, and that relationship obviously didn't remain there. But they have a lot of things going on, so we were getting that at no cost. So it was pretty good. But I was leading with a point. But
let me interrupt here
Yeah.
a second, because I want to talk about the softball side.
Very good.
They have Tom Ebal does the teaching and evaluation of the candidates to be an umpire. He does that at Memorial High School, and then we have our annual meeting at Wintersquam, which isn't too far out than that. So. And the goal of all those is Tommy works with you and has multiple people helping him to learn the mechanics, learn the basics of what you have to do, the positioning, and of course the rules and stuff. And then you have a rules test that you have to take and pass every year. And just like baseball, you have to
you do?
test.
Every single year?
Every single year for
So like a recertification kind of
for
thing?
every group, for Babe Ruth, ASA,
Really?
New Hampshire softball and baseball, and then even the NCAA's and that. So it's mandatory.
And then are they constantly adding courses and things too?
No, basically, your development certainly, and I'll tell you, when we went through, they didn't have it, and I think they started shortly after Bob completed his course requirements, is we would I remember the thought, and I'll tie back into what I'm saying here, is when you're going through the course, there's rules that you spend a lot of time on, and then there's mechanics. And then when you talk about field work, and that's where you have to go, this is where you have to show your commitment, because you can be assigned as many junior varsity games as you want to take. So that's where they start you out. And what our association, as well as the softball association, does is when you're out there, part of the course work is they actually have independent evaluators that will come and observe you. And they'll write down what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right. And needless to say, the first time you're evaluated out there, you're going to be marked up a lot. But that's what they do. It's just like having been in the service, they build you up, okay? And I should stand correct on that. They crush you, okay? And then they start building you up slowly. So it's like in the push down, okay, it's designed to how bad do you want it and how much of a commitment. So I took on a lot of JV games, and my problem is being short of a little ego, okay?
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
right.
I just had this feeling that I could get on the field, and my article in there that I wrote was very humbling, that I thought I could get in there and do it. And Bob may have felt the same way, and then I realized I don't know jack.
Now, does that go on continuously?
Constant evaluations.
At every game?
We evaluate ourselves. In other words, I'll evaluate Bob, he'll evaluate me, but now we have outside evaluators coming in, and they'll evaluate us at least twice a year. And you are graded, and then you're set up as an A, B, or C level umpire.
Now, let me go back on two questions,
Yes.
A, B, and C, what that means. But what's the difference between this? Now, this is a totally dumb question. This will definitely certify how little I know. What's the difference between rules and mechanics?
Bobby, you want to take that?
That's a great question. There's a rule book that tells you what's a ball, what's a strike, what's an out, etc.
Okay.
And then there's a mechanics, which shows you all the positioning you should be to make a call at the bases that are there. So it's again, for you to make the right call, to be in a position to see what goes on. Did the foot touch the first base, or did the ball get there first? Where's the best position to see that? And where's the tag, and etc.
Now, how often do referees, or umpires, I should say, how often do umpires get in a disagreement on a field?
On a call?
Yeah.
You never openly had that kind
You
of
wouldn't do it
discussion in the middle
publicly,
of the
right?
game.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if a call is made, call stands, there's no problem
Regardless
with
if
it.
everybody else
Well,
doesn't
no, an
think it's so
official,
great?
I should say a coach can come out, and the home plate umpire controls the movement of a coach in terms of where he can go. Certainly he can come out and talk, he'll call time.
Okay.
He's got to call time.
Okay.
And the official calls time and kills the ball.
Okay.
And then can come on out and say, I'd like to talk to your partner. And as Bob alluded to, in our mechanics, in high school, it's two-man mechanics until we get into playoffs. Then we become three-man. And I think at the college level, you guys have three-man all the time?
Division I is all three-man, and then Division II is two-man until the playoffs, and it's three-man.
So to
if
answer
you
your
disagree, then it would all kind of it's going to stand at the game, but then maybe later you're going to have a spirited talk?
No. See, if he says to Bob, if Steve comes out to me and he says, Bob calls, to use an example, we'll say a play at the plate at first base was close, all right? And I'm in a certain mechanic position, okay? We call it a B or C position. We won't get into that.
Okay.
And I'm looking directly at the base, but I don't see, and I'm just looking at the guy at first base. I may not see his foot pulled off, and I may pop him.
And somebody else
And
will
then the
say
coach may come out and say, Blue, meaning the home ump, I'd like to talk to your field guy. So he comes out to me and says, I think he pulled his foot off the base. He's following protocol. He can't go to Bob and say, I think he pulled his foot off. And Bob said, yeah, I think you're right. He's got to go to the guy that made the call.
Okay.
And if he says to me, can you guys get together? And if I feel, gee, because we want to get the call right. And that's even see that at the major league level, okay? I'll go to Bob and say, he says he thinks he pulled his foot off the bag on that out call. What do you see, Bob? And Bob can say, no, that was good, or yep, and then I'll say, okay, because he's got that view, and that's all about mechanics in terms of the site.
Yeah, that's there's two different calls. There's a judgment call, and then there's a rule call.
Okay.
Now, on a rule, that's protestable. So if Bill and I are working together, we have to get that right, because the coach then could protest the game, and that causes all kinds of paperwork and issues in that. On a judgment call, if I got the plate and Bill's on the bases, he asked me for permission to go talk to him. I can deny him or not. Typically, I'd let him go and say, go talk to him. And then Bill would have the right to come to me and ask, what did I see? Did I have a view? Did I have the same thing? Did I see that was there? And 95% of the time, I'm asking him questions. What were you, what did you see? What are you blocked? We're making sure he's gone through the thought process that we've been trained to do in that. And if he has, and I got no other input to that, what's your question in that? And a lot of times you do things out of courtesy. Number one, we want to get every call right. Yeah. We're not going to. Yeah. We're not. It's just the way things work.
Especially with two-man.
Yeah, and especially a lot of it's mechanics. We can't be in the right position to see that particular play. And there are some calls, the first base coach or the dugout, they have the best look in the ballpark. Because I'm up at third base and he's at second base, and he had the best look at first base, which we're both looking like, across the diamond at. But, you do with what you can, and you try and get as many. But, to overrule a call, it has to be a procedure. Either, yes, I've had calls where they pulled their foot and I didn't see it, and my home plate guy, and that is his job to be in position to see that. I'll go to him and say, Bill, was it that happen? I absolutely did. Okay, I got, that's why we work two-man. We work together to get the calls right. And you got to put your ego aside and that. But then, if there's a judgment call, no, I judge that, so many times people think that the ball beats the runner, the tie goes to the runner. Find that in any rule book. Tie goes to the umpire. And you know what? We like outs.
Well, the thing I think that people should recognize that there are actually 3 teams out there in the field, regardless of whatever sport, and that's your officiating team. And so,
good point.
And believe me, I just brought up on our website, and I don't know if Michael can bring that up, but these are the mechanics. And there's a lot of mechanics and diagrams that we work with, and it's called repetitiveness. So we keep doing our thing, and we work. So we're interchangeable parts. Officials don't work with the same guys like major leagues, okay? We're interchangeable parts. This is true in football, basketball. The mechanics are your denominator. They're the ones that, regardless of who's working, everybody is on the same page, knows where to be when the ball's hit, knows where to be when a charge is being called or on the basketball court or whatever. So we know the protocols. Before each game, we review mechanics. Post-game, we review mechanics. We talk about it. And it's all about communications, which is true at all levels. So, and the reason, we have to do it, especially at the high school level, and even at the college level, where you don't have 4 officials, is because there is monies involved. At the high school level, they're always being challenged, certainly by budgets.
Sure.
And we get paid, and we try to do a good job. But we all say that if we walk off the field and nobody noticed us, it's been a great game.
Yeah, that's you want to be not memorable, and that's the key. And now, as you move up, different conferences have different things. For instance, you do a Big Ten game, or you do an ACC game. At the end of your tournament, they give you a DVD of your evaluation.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, and if the coach gives it to you.
And do they comment on it as well?
No, if the coach gives it to you, he or she has comments for you. Usually you get it from the site administrator or somebody else, but when you see a coach walking over to you and you're getting that, they have words for you. You're going to enjoy this game 2 or whatever, and that, and that all happens. But you're constantly evaluating. And I think there's 3 different types of referees and umpires, and that one is always trying to improve. And I take criticism the best thing. We all have egos, and so you tell me I was in the wrong spot or something, you get nervous about that and say, well, geez, what did I do? No, I didn't do that. Well, the DVD shows I did do it or didn't do it, and that. But secondly, then there's umpires that are there learning it and trying to get better, haven't figured out all of it, and then there's ones that are just there because they know if they're not there, the game's not going to be there. They don't care about moving up. They don't care about this. I'm here. I'm going to get my $80 or whatever it is and go home.
You think they bring the same thing to it?
Well, it's you need them. First off, none of our kids, none of our kids are going to play sports if there's not umpires or refs.
But I mean, do you think that they, I don't know, do you think it affects outcomes or whatever when they have that mindset?
I don't like working with guys that just want to show up. I've shown up. I work games.
They're very
it's usually
rare.
in high school.
Very, very.
Usually in high school, they'll
rare.
show up 5 minutes before the game, and I've actually had partners that, as I'm calling the last strikeout, they're already on their halfway to their car and,
Is that right?
and starting the engine.
I would say that
but that's
is,
really rare.
That I would say not so much. That's probably at the lower levels. I mean, they are so short of officials, particularly when you. Bedford Little League is all volunteers, you know. And my hat's off to the parents that get involved in officiating and coaching. At Babe Ruth, that's the fundraiser that Dave Costa does. They're paying officials to cover those games. And there are guys.
Babe Ruth
Babe
does.
Ruth.
Babe Little League.
Babe Ruth has a tough time getting officials.
Right. And
really
what they'll do
But
is
I mean,
they try.
but no, I mean, Little League does not pay any
No.
officials.
Nope.
It's all voluntary.
That's all we all
voluntary.
learned and all did it.
And that is a selection on the part of the town. There are other towns that may, if their budget allows, will pay for officials. That doesn't mean you're getting a better official. So
But is it mandatory with Babe Ruth?
Let me put it this way: they won't get any officials unless they pay. Every Babe Ruth league pays officials, and so they have to do a lot of fundraising. So what happens is they'll go to associations, but when you have, if I can call it for lack of a better term, our professional association, New Hampshire Baseball Umpire Association, or New Hampshire Softball Umpire Association, etc. When sometimes our guys belong to those Babe Ruth, because Babe Ruth can. To get certified in Babe Ruth, you don't have to go through any mechanics. You take a test. It's an open book test, and you send it in, so you could be Joe Schmo coming out. Exactly. But you usually get people there that they'll do an okay job. Otherwise, you're not going to have an official. But what happens sometimes, and this is not to make a blanket statement, because you do get some good Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
But as Bob and I well know, there are some people that this is all they do. And we know one particular guy from way back when that was doing 4 7-inning games a day, and he is that guy that's walking on and off. He is the rarity. So I don't want to give anybody the impression.
Now, keep in mind, we all, at Little League, we start off as volunteers to do it because of the love of our kids and etc. But that also, I've done a lot of, upper level college. The worst games I ever got screamed at were at Little League. And and there's 2 reasons. One, the kids are 12 years old, and it's a very good level of ball. It's on a field where the kids it's the right size field for them.
Yeah.
So they're hitting home runs, they're doing stuff. There's a lot of bangers or fast plays. And yet parents all think their kid's the next, Alex Rodriguez or Willie Mays or whatever. And so, it's the mothers that get more emotional than the fathers sometimes.
I've heard that. And that actually was one of the questions I was going to ask you, because, I mean, it seems that some of these parents almost get rabid, in terms of their kids. I mean, it almost seems out of control. Do you think in some cases that the parents are sort of taking all the fun out of it for the kids?
Well, I will tell you, I'm going to answer it this way. As an official, and the more experience and the higher level you go, I mean, Bob's done the game, Fisher Cat Stadium, Gill Stadium, Holman Stadium down in Nashua, that you become deaf to the comments. You're into the game. Can you hear him? Yeah. Sure. Do we as an official have a responsibility that if you have some vulgarity going on, particularly at a high school game, which the NHIAA, New Hampshire Interscholastic Athletic Association, it's not our responsibility to kind of control that. It really is the coaches. We go over the coaches and they can, handle that. And I just tie that back because it's not our responsibility.
No,
so when you have parents, we're hoping coaches will take care of that. If there is a parent that is really out of control, coach can't handle it, very rarely, and it's having an impact on the game, the official can ask for the removal of that individual.
Well, yeah, but I mean, just on a kind of a day-to-day basis. I mean, I guess the current term seems like every couple of years there's a new title that some newspaper writer or something comes up with, you know. And I think the latest one is the helicopter parent.
Hovering parent, yeah.
Yeah, and is that, I mean, are the helicopter parents in something, not just baseball or softball, but I mean generally taking a lot of the fun away from the kids by trying to make it so darn competitive and everything?
Bill knows this from running Little League, and my wife ran Little League, and I ran the basketball league in town. The parents stay the same. They just different. The faces, the names change. You have certain types of parents that are always going to be the yellers and screamers, and you know, my kid's the best, blah blah, etc. And it's there. I don't think it's changed in the 30 years we've been involved in Bedford stuff.
That's a whole other show, Kathy.
Yeah, it is.
Well, yeah.
Parents have never
really
changed.
amazing.
They're just to what level. And now you have with the social media and the camera phones and all that, they're just capturing the same stuff that was going on 30 years ago.
I guess it
The
just
difference
seems
is,
so prevalent
30 years
today.
ago, our parents didn't go to games.
Well, that's true. Yeah, they were at work.
They were busy
Yeah.
working.
Or mom was there, dad was,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
working.
true.
Yeah.
It is true.
Right. Yeah,
And
so-
I don't know, maybe there's more attention to it because of some of these reality shows that are on TV that like there's one about the cheering squads. And the mothers, you know, are all almost at each other's throat. And then Dance Moms, I guess, is another one that, you know, they're I think, in fact, I think I saw an ad on the new, you know, TV this week that they actually get into some kind of a fist fight or something. And this is over their little girls dancing, for crying out loud.
I
They
have two
were
daughters, so I've seen
competitive
Dance Mom. I know Bill hasn't.
And to tie this back into
Unfortunately.
officiating, because there is some, the competitiveness, and
Yeah.
as you said, because everything's so visible, particularly, you know, Bobby and I could do a high school baseball game. I'll give you an example. Londonderry High School. The NHIAA is, and that's the New Hampshire Interscholastic Athletic Association. As well, if you're down in Massachusetts, good sportsmanship is really strongly encouraged, okay? When we go out to the plate, we go through a dialogue in terms of players being properly equipped, et cetera, and I always emphasize, and as the NHIAA association requires, good sportsmanship, and so our conversation should be kept to ourselves, et cetera. So during the high school season, that's normally pretty good because the coaches are pretty well controlled. In the rules, at the high school level, we deal with a different set of rules that revolve around conduct and speed of the game and safety. So we could get through doing high school ball, and then we go to what we call regular baseball rules, and there's certain things that change. There are rule differences, all right?
Okay.
And those same players, and I went to Londonderry because Bob and I did American Legion baseball. Bobby still does. I don't have real time to do that. And I'm doing Londonderry Post, and the same kids that were great during the season, they're not controlled with the penalties, okay, that a high school, the coaches, and either.
And the
all of a
AD.
sudden-
The
and the
AD is a
AD.
big
And the
part of
ADs are extremely involved at the high school level. As the post won't do something or the coach has got a bad person. And it was wild. And I would say on an average, well, I'll throw no kids out of a game or a coach out of the game during the high school season. And we bend over backwards not to remove anybody from a game. And Legion ball, Bobby, 2 to 3 during the course of a year, maybe even more. And
Oh,
it's
I've had 2 or 3 a game, and some.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately,
gets
some games are that way.
Coaches, players, or both?
I've done both.
Really?
Yeah. Again, it's all, you know, Legion, when they get to their tournament and they make it or break it, it's very tense for them.
And I think what we're saying here is we had to start out in Little League. And then we had, you know, the Babe Ruth. And now you're doing high school.
going up.
And Bobby reached the point, okay, now I'm going to do softball. My time doesn't allow that. But what's the biggest difference? Why do you need the mechanics constantly? It's because the speed of the game just takes off. We're talking instantaneous things happening. The thing that they train us on is to not knee-jerk. It's really, and as Bob said earlier, you take a step back to see the whole play, and then it's not like, oh, make it quick. You're looking at it, and sometimes you may see people in the stands going, he's not going to make a call. It's not that slow, but all of a sudden it's like, boom, or boom. See, you gotta really make up, you know, you gotta see it, digest it, and that takes practice. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a quick story on that. One of my friends shared this video with me of his CD. He was doing Northwestern Michigan softball game. Girl was on first and third. there's one strike on the batter. The batter goes to bunt. And did she attempt or not attempt? She pulled back, went to pull back. The catcher came up throwing, threw it to the second baseman who tagged a runner out, who then turned around and threw a BB back home to tag the runner out or safe or not. And now, so you had a ball or strike. Was there batter interference on the throw down to second? Coming back, was there obstruction by the catcher who's standing in front of the plate? Or was there interference with the batter who's still in the batter's box? And then there was collision there. Was it was it the collision because there was a Division I game? So you had all these collisions. All this happened in under 2 seconds. Yeah. And I looked at the tape. Under 2 seconds, they had to make all those decisions. And the actual call that my friend got wrong was it was obstruction on the catcher because they were blocking the plate. And I never would have called that when I first saw it the first 5 times. And then all of a sudden I saw the rule and I go, oh, she was standing in front of the plate. And so, here 5 times I get to see it in reverse and he got it wrong and that. So there's so many things, and that's not to scare anybody, but all those things happen in a 2-second period, and you got to be right and know the rule and know what's there. And,
basically what Bob's saying is, but you learn a lot of the timing and the skills at the level that you're comfortable at, and then when you feel that you want to move on to the next level, you can. But we've been in it,
so
over a dozen.
That's more self-directed?
Well, yeah, I mean, what happens is I get an adrenaline rush. I know Bill does too. When you do a game, when you're playing a game, you have that adrenaline rush. You like doing it. Well, now that we're umpiring, we have our own mechanics, and we like to make sure we're doing it right. And 95% of why Bill and I did it is after the game, we all go sit at Pizza Bella and have a beer and talk about what we screwed up, what we didn't, and et cetera. And that's why we did it. But that adrenaline rush we get, and that's why I still do it, is first off, the kids need to do it, and second off, if you can do it and move up, it's a lot of fun. And if you're following the rules, and it's invigorating. I'm exhausted after games, even if I do a high school game, and high school and the middle school games are some of the most intense because so much stuff can happen. Yeah. It's just at a little bit slower pace.
It's constant studying, and as Bob said, there are many times that we will get together, whether I'm working with Bob or my other partner or partners, depending, because in postseason we go in a 3-man system, we call it. We're constantly talking. It's studying. What do you think about this? And we'll challenge one another. What about this? Challenge one another on a rule. One thing that I can tell you unequivocally is we know the rules better than any of the coaches. And coaches, you would think, would know the rules inside and out. A good coach does, but even the good coach doesn't. When we get a rule wrong, it's devastating. I mean, as Bob said earlier, judgment calls are one thing. If there's a rules incorrectly, applied, then a protest goes in. And there's nothing more embarrassing if the protest goes forward, particularly the other team that wasn't protesting. I mean, you made the ruling in their favor, but the other team protested, and it goes against you. Now you've screwed everything up, and that's embarrassing. So that's why officials get together and just say, what do you think?
Does that happen often?
No.
No?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, that's
well, let me put it this way. Bill and I have never gotten a rule wrong. Ever. Wow. However,
Pinocchio.
No. However, the rule we got may have been a Babe Ruth rule that we knew, and we're doing Little League, or we're doing a high school game, or we're doing a college game, and that's the NCAA. They all have. There's 183 rule differences between the NCAA and high school Federation softball. Right. 183, and that may have changed. I just got the new thing, and I forgot to bring it, but it's literally a quarter of an inch thick of rule differences.
And how often do they change rules?
Well, I would tell you the New Hampshire Federation for it's called NFHS. That's the National Federation for High Schools, and they pretty much govern the processes, procedures, and the rules. And I swear sometimes, and Bob, you and I used to kid, because it's association, they just get together and they say, okay, we're at this conference now, we've got to justify. But, differences,
meetings are always scary.
I'll throw you a couple of differences. They're minor. Remember I told there was speed up is in regular baseball, okay, when they want to intentionally walk somebody, the catcher has to be behind the plate, okay, he has to keep both feet in while the pitcher has his foot on the plate, pitches plate. As soon as he throws the ball, then he can take that one step out, but they have to throw at least 4 pitches. To speed up, because games start at 4 o'clock, the Federation will have a rule that says the coach or the catcher can turn around and maybe it's usually the coach telling the catcher, we want to walk them. We both go, time, go to first base. So there's no potential. And there's different things like that. Those are rules established by the National Federation of High Schools. Then there's the NHIAA that has some procedural process. You know, NHIAA.org, if you want to go in there. We print off the baseball policies and procedures so that we know what they're requesting of us. And that usually deals with how to handle concussions, lightning, etc. And
that's what all people think should have to be involved.
yeah,
in too,
so there's a lot of reading that we do. And as Bob said, rules are one thing, okay? Rules. What Bob said when I kind of went to Pinocchio, and I kind of momentarily said, wait a minute, we're talking rules, we're not talking mechanics. Obstruction, interference, that's a mechanic, okay? It's not a rule. So those are all the things that you learn.
Now let me ask you this.
To answer your question, the rules change for college every 2 years, and then it flows. Yeah, there's a new manual every 2 years for that, and then it flows down to the high school, and that's the way normal things progress. Major leagues will do something, and then it'll go to college, and then it'll go all the way down, eventually Little League, and you know.
That's not a whole mass rule change.
Well, no,
He's just making adjustments and just. You know,
yeah,
but still, it's stuff everybody has to keep track of. Now, what? I'm assuming that you've both umpired women's games.
I have not.
Never?
Never.
No? Have you?
Yes, that's my main. That's
And
what I mainly do now.
what's the difference?
That's how we get into it.
What's the difference between umpiring a women's game and a man's game?
Well, you know, I got into it because my daughters were very competitive, and one, Kate played at Bryant, which meant it ended up going to Division I, and then Allie plays right now at Merrimack. And when I am umpiring a women's game, the college level, I can say, you know, they don't take it personally. It's a whole different attitude.
As much as the guys, really?
As the guys. They're very competitive, but if you've been calling that pitch a ball all day long or a strike all day long, they know that. And the coaches will get on him. He's been calling there all day. My experience with the guys, you've been blowing that pitch all day long, and they still won't swing at it. They won't do it. And they're very stubborn that way, and it gets, you know.
Well, of course, I know women are more reasonable, so that's one of the reasons I
and
asked.
You know, and they actually,
right?
And actually,
Can I
give
blow
you
a whistle
quick.
now?
You'll like this story, Kathy. I got into doing softball because of my daughters, and Kristen Bayless, remember her? She was a tremendous softball player. She gets. I'm umpiring at second base. I'm at the base right there. She hits she had just hit a double, and she's on second base. She's going to go steal third, and I'm right there. In softball, you're behind the base. You're right there. And I'm there. She's going to go steal third, and she falls down. The catcher throws the ball hard, and the girl comes into second base and slaps her as hard as she can, and she gets in there, and I call her safe. The second baseman asked Kristen why she's just slapped her as hard as she possibly could on the arm. Says, "Do you still have those red pumps shoes?" She goes, "Yeah," and she throws the ball back to the pitcher. Says, "I like to wear them tonight." "Yeah, okay, I can have them for you." The next pitch, she goes off. So I had to call time. I'm laughing. Here they are. I thought there was going to be a brawl because she slapped her, and the two girls are talking about what they're going to wear to the party that night.
Whereas the guys would probably beat each other's throats.
They would. They would have been.
You definitely, and I think maybe, and I'm not going to assume anything, that we know guys that they doing college baseball, and that's intense. But maybe Bobby, I can't put words in your mouth, you know, he's going to choose the softball side. I just think women in general have an easier nature in a competitive environment than guys are. And that just
we have an easier nature across
in general,
the board.
yeah.
The girls, they want to be competitive. They want to win.
Yeah.
But they can turn it off and on much better than the guys can, I think.
Interesting.
You know.
Now, are there any women umpires?
Yes.
In New Hampshire, too?
Yes.
And the guys, there are several,
Yes.
and probably 40 or 50% in the softball are.
Now, now I'm going to put you on the spot. How do the men umpires take to the women umpires?
Well,
any conflict? Or?
No, none.
No?
I worked with Barbara Michaels for many years in
No, not at all.
baseball.
I mean, you know what it is, Kathy? Whether male or female official,
Yeah.
if you call a good game and you are doing a good job in the field, there's a respect. And
That's good to
so
hear.
we've never had any issues whatsoever. So, and we have we don't have many, just I think we have 2 or 3, and they're very good officials. And I think the best way to validate how well they're doing is that none of the coaches have any issues whatsoever.
Really?
When that's correct.
Now, on all levels, the upper levels too, are there women umpires?
There's probably more women doing college softball.
Really?
There's, you know, they move up from a lot of their ex-players and stuff do it and stuff. And that,
Are they doing men's baseball in college?
I don't know that. I can't answer that. I probably less.
Yeah.
I mean, as I say, probably 40% of our board is, almost all of our management is women. I think there's one guy on it. So
there is a distinction. You know, what I was referring to earlier, it was just the baseball side, you know, the 2 or 3 women that we have, and they're very, very good. Yep.
Well, I'm kind of
That being said, though,
yeah.
and they're evaluated, I haven't seen them in the post-tournament. I don't know what that means. So.
Well, I was going to ask you a question about that, but I'm kind of looking at the clock because
Yeah.
I figured, you know, Bob, I've been known to not pay attention.
Now
really?
I understand.
Oh,
Now I
Just run
understand.
overtime. But I figured, you know, since he's here, you know, I have to at
Oh,
least
no,
go
no,
through
no,
the
no, no.
pretense of making like I'm following the rules. You
I
know what
can't
I mean?
do that.
Wouldn't it be funny if I have to cut him off?
No, we
He
have
doesn't
Michael
really-
back there, and he's going like, you get 7 minutes and 23 seconds. So what's
he's
your
going to
next
come call us
question?
out.
Well, how is someone chosen to cover the post-league playoffs? And I mean, what kind of experience is that?
Remember-
Is that like very exciting?
Well, I mentioned earlier that for both baseball as well as softball, you're evaluated during the course of the season.
Is that when you get into the ABC thing?
That's correct.
Okay, because
All
I
right.
did ask you, and you kind of
Yes.
didn't answer me on that
Yes,
one.
and
Okay.
but you know, and it's very specific. I mean, what we're trying to do in our association, at one point there were a lot of the same people going into postseason, and there's usually 4 postseason games. There's a preliminary round, there's the quarterfinals, semifinals, and then finals.
Now, is there
And
going to be the same umpires for the whole?
when in
Stretch?
preliminaries, no, but when you get into the quarters and the semis, they're usually a team, because then you go to 3-man. So where we
Okay.
normally do 2-man, they want you to get used to doing the 3-man as teams.
Okay.
And to answer your question, in years past, there always seemed to be, particularly with the finals, the same people that were maybe rotating every other year. It's more of a challenge in basketball where you see some of the same guys, but like all of our associations, and I'm on the board, we're encouraging, we want to keep that young blood. And young blood, believe it or not, is 7 or 8 years, as we call it. And start moving in them to get them experience in the postseason, and to feel and taste the finals and the quarterfinals and the semis, because you want to retain your membership. So we're making a conscious effort to get good people in there. And yeah, you have to show what you can do during the course of the season to be selected. So, and I'm sure it's the same way in softball.
Now, with you jumped up to the next level, to the college, and the softball and such. And I know just from BCTV board meetings and such that you do a lot of traveling. And obviously you have a whole lot of bigger challenges. So what made you decide to make that big jump?
Well, again, watching my daughters play.
Yeah, that was the big motivation.
That was a big part of it. My one daughter was a hitter, and she liked hitting the outside pitch. And if I'm given this far outside, she can't hit that pitch, you know, so that she didn't like it. Now, my other daughter's a pitcher. She wants that pitch, you know, here at the plate, they want that outside pitch all the time. So I have both perspectives, what a kid can hit and what a kid can pitch. And that, and so
Are they competitive with each other, the girls?
oh, absolutely,
Yeah?
absolutely,
Yeah?
and everything they do, and they actually get along very well now that they're 25 and 20,
Well, yeah.
21.
Yeah. Probably when they were younger, there was a
I
lot
think
of
once all our
arguing,
kids get to be
yeah,
adult
yeah, I
age,
know. Yeah, when they're
Yeah.
teenagers,
right?
the
I know.
But yeah,
mouths can go
you know,
back and forth a lot. Yeah. Now, what do you feel like the biggest difference is between umpiring at the high school level and the college level? Is it huge?
This is gonna sound funny, but it's actually easier to do a college game than it is a high school game.
Why? Because the kids are more mature? Or?
No, it's more predictable. You know what's going to happen. The timing's very quick. I'll do an hour and 10 minutes. I'll do a game in softball, college softball, and I'll do 2 games in 3 hours in a college softball, typically, because you change. There's a 2-man crew for Division II. You change, and even in Division I, sometimes I've done 45-minute games in Division I, where it's just pitching, they're throwing, and the hitters aren't hitting, and it's that. But in high school, anything can happen. There's pitchers, they're not going to do what you expect.
That is true.
If you don't mind me interjecting here, that is a real good point, because as players get older and they understand the game better, their mechanics as players are very, very good and consistent. I got to emphasize for the people at home, if you are say, well, I know what goes on in Little League, you're talking about craziness down there. The kids they're just learning the game. They're all over the place. Junior varsity games, even when they're first getting in, they're all over the place. I mean, you think, okay, they're older. No. High school games, it's a little more controlled, and you can understand. And I can see where you're going with that, Bob. Yeah, because, okay, you know the game. You know how to pivot it, you know, from that, on that double play going to first and second. You're making it easy for me not to make an interference or an obstruction call and all that sort of stuff. I know we only got a few more minutes.
I want to ask you one fast question.
Yeah,
this
and I do want to bring up our website so people understand that there's all sorts of support out there. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, because I'm going to give you each a minute to close.
Okay.
But this is a wild card question. You can answer me in one word.
Okay.
All right. Of all the sports, you know, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever, which of them do you think, or is there one that's the hardest to umpire, or do you think they're all equal?
Oh, I can answer that, and Bob and I have talked about it. I would never be a basketball official, and he has been. I think it is difficult to, you talk about a fast-paced game.
Yeah.
It's split second. I always say to him, how do you tell the difference between a block and a charge? And you know,
Well,
are you going to call that
too,
foul?
wouldn't
You're touching him on the hip or you're not, but he lived
Hockey
it.
being in there too, I would think.
Yeah, well, I think hockey, you've got three guys out there, you know, I mean, but maybe I think you're right, but Bob lives it and breathes, and he's coached as well as
my oldest son is a gymnast, and so gymnastics would be, I'd say, would be the hardest, because I have no clue. That looked good.
Yeah,
You flipped over and did
even
some
that good
things.
at a gymnast,
Yeah, but that, and then basketball, I think, is, and it's just there's so many calls, and you know. And
Well, we are down to, literally, 1 minute and 53 seconds.
Michael's
so
going to say,
Jennings,
okay.
go for it. And leave him some time.
I will. I'm just going to make it real quick because I just want to bring up our website. Mike, if you can bring up the website.
We'll get him under control somehow.
nah.
And I'm going to assume, because the TV's off in here,
Oh, we're down to 134.
that we have it.
Oh, I want to see
for anybody
Jennings
that's
break
interested,
his own rules
yeah,
here.
for anybody
Yay.
that's interested in becoming part of the high school baseball umpiring association, you don't necessarily have to end up, you know, umpiring in high school, although it does prepare you. We have that website. It's nhbua.org. Go through it, and it'll show you exactly how to enroll, when the courses are, and I think you'll find it extremely enjoyable. And there's one other website before I turn it over. If you don't go to,
We're going to catch you off any
Yeah, I
second,
know,
Jennings.
you're
You're
gonna-
going
how
to
to
break your
become-
own rules here.
Bob, of transition
I
is,
want him to break his own
yeah, I
rules.
know.
And it's serve
You
him
keep
right.
interrupting me, and you're right. I'm going to
Is that the softball?
So the National Association of Sports Officials is where you can go and find out how to become an official in every single sport. So now we're going to bring up Bob's
He's running out the
softball,
clock on you.
and it's you're on, Bob.
You're
Is
on.
that the softball? The NHSUA?
Yeah.
Softball? Okay,
Yep.
great. It's a great opportunity. You know, it keeps you in the game, and for those of you who work with your daughters, and it's a lot of fun. So go to their website. I encourage you to do that. And there's dozens of board members that have done games you can talk to on that. And I think it's a terrific way to stay involved with your kids in that.
Any final words?
It's fun. You'll enjoy it. It's great exercise, and the camaraderie is just fantastic.
How about you?
That's the same. I enjoy working with the people I work with. That's why I like doing it.
Well, this has been a fun show. Let's do another one on something like
Hey,
this.
sounds
again.
great.
You know, maybe you can bring us out to the field and we'll do something out there and we can watch all
Only
the
if you
action.
wear a hat again.
That'd be all
I was
right.
gonna say, wear that
All right.
hat.
All right, maybe I'll get a different one though.
Yeah, we'll get you out there.
All right. Well, listen, everybody, I hope you really enjoyed the show. It was certainly different for Tell It Like It Is, and these guys told it like it is as far as umpiring goes. So again, a little bit different, but we have to kind of mix things up to keep you all watching. So anyway, until next time, hope you come back, and until then, bye-bye.